Welcome to Getting Rich Together. I'm your host, Syama Bunten. This show was born from my own journey. Coming out of a divorce, I reached out to 50 women to talk to them about money. 95% of them did not want to go there. That's when I realized we need spaces where wealth isn't hidden in silence, but shared in possibilities. Here, you'll meet women from all backgrounds, trailblazers, risk takers, visionaries, each expanding what wealth can look like. This is your place to be inspired, to discover new pathways, and to remember that we rise by building wealth together. Getting Rich Together is a Wealth Catalyst production. At Wealth Catalyst, we bring together education, networks, and great opportunities for women to build wealth and change the world. Now, on to today's show. Today, I am joined by the fabulous Abbe Large, Managing Director of Lennox Advisors and one of Forbes' top financial security professionals. Darling, you have spent decades helping people make better financial decisions. You've done it with clarity, with heart. I am so excited to have you share who you are today and honestly, how you managed to build such a prolific career working at two major companies, but not having sort of the portfolio career that we hear about today. I feel like this is impressive on so many fronts. But before we dive into all of the incredible things that you do today, the prolific woman that you are, I love to start with you as a little girl. So Abbe, welcome to the show. Thank you for letting us see behind the woman on stage, and welcome to Getting Rich Together.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is awesome. Thank you.
Wonderful. So let's dive in. Yeah. Pigtails, ponytails, French braids. You know, what was it like for you when you were a little girl between 10 to 12 years old? Where were you living in this world? What was life like? What was your hair like? And what was money like around you?
Okay. There were 3 questions in there. Where did I live? I grew up on Long Island, not on Long Island in Comac. We were, I guess, middle class. I never really had the relationship I had with money growing up was interesting because my parents never really spent money on us. And in all fairness, I'm just going to fast forward and let you know that it was a dysfunctional household. And my dad passed away in 2019, which instilled my why in my practice, but I'm also estranged from my sister and my mother right now. So when you ask, what is my childhood like? I grew up with a narcissist addict and a father that couldn't handle conflict and a sister that was hibernating in her room most of the time. And I think from the moment I was born, I didn't feel like I belonged to this family, strangely enough. In fact, my mother, and I never got along with my sister. My mother told me this story and it answered a lot of questions. And of course, thousands of dollars of therapy later, I realized I was pretty much abandoned as a kid, meaning they were just never around. And when I was born, my mother got pregnant like right away and she got very sick and she went to the hospital for months and they gave me to the neighbors. And then she came home after months of being away. This is my first year of life. And she comes home with my sister and I come into the house. And I guess that was the moment I felt like, second, I don't know. I just was like, who is this infant and why is she here? Right? So growing up, it was really toxic. We didn't really have family dinners of conversation or good food. My parents didn't eat very well. They ate a lot of processed stuff. I also had a learning disability that went undiagnosed. And because I was such a strong-minded child, I hit it really well. And my EQ went through the charts because my IQ is being challenged. So I'm grateful for that. Let's see, now fast forward, my first job, because my parents didn't spend any money on me. I remember going to the Salvation Army to buy new clothes for school when all my friends were going to the retail stores. So I got a job. My first job I was 14 years old. I was waitressing at Howard Johnson's. I worked at Chuck E. Cheese. I got into those those costumes. And yeah, I just did anything I could to make money. And when I went off to college, I had to work the entire time. I was a barmaid. I was a waitress. I had to do something for money because I really didn't. I was grateful that they paid for my tuition, but they didn't really pay for much else. So everything else was up to me. So hard work for me was instilled at a very early age. If it's going to be, it's up to me kind of concept. So yeah, that's kind of how I was brought up. And, I guess I'm doing now what drove my parents nuts when I was growing up, which is the fact that I could never accept the word no. And I always wanted to know why. Just tell me why. Because I said so is not a reason. Like, just tell me why. And I think that was the beginning of my craft that I use now because I need to understand, right? I seek to understand before I'm understood. So like, why? Why no? So I can turn that no into a yes thing, which was the strategy. But I didn't have great support. I didn't have great coaches. I didn't have great parents. I had one teacher who I credit today for my love of reading and for my comprehension. And I'll tell you this story. I was in 10th grade. Now, I think you're 15 when you're in 10th grade. And I was taking this class and then this teacher said, stay after class. I did. I was so scared. I thought I was in trouble. And she handed me a book and she said, open up a page and read it out loud. I did. And then after I was done, she said, what did you read? I said, I couldn't answer. So she said, would you mind coming back tomorrow after school? I said, sure, no problem. So I did. She handed me a book. It was a huge, thick book called The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck. It's a Pulitzer Prize winning book. And she said, okay, open it up. Start from the first page. And days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months. And I was running to her class after school because I was so excited reading this book. And it was the first time in my life that I ever comprehended a book like that. And I credit her to this day for my love of reading and for going to one of the most prestigious journalism schools in the country and all of that stuff. But I had mentioned this to my husband a little while ago. He said, why don't you try and reach out to her and say, let her know. Great idea. So I Googled her and I found her email. I sent her an email. It went unanswered. I said, she's either traveling or she's dead. There's no in between with this woman. And I never got a response. But the next year, I was invited to my high school reunion and the guest of honor was this teacher. Blew my mind. So I went and I saw her and I told her, and she gave me an inscribed book that she wrote with her son of poems. 2 weeks later, I found out she died of a sudden heart attack.
No way. Wow.
Yeah. So I think the lesson in that story is if someone has taken the time to change your life, tell them.
Wow. Okay. So here you are finding yourself in this world largely alone, knowing that you had to work to survive, to create the life that you would want, picking up modeling from people around you who maybe didn't know that you were even modeling or trying to learn from them, from the way that they show up. And then you export yourself into university. And aside from knowing that you needed a job to survive, what was it else that you knew of yourself? What did you think you wanted to be? How did you organize the world that you were living in?
It's a really good question, and and I've been talking about this a lot with a lot of other podcasters, and I'm finally coming full circle with why. I grew up with not a lot of support. I grew up with being alone, being abandoned, right? And I was searching for something. I knew that my soul was missing something. And when I graduated from college, I got into advertising, and yes, I met some friends, and I was trying to learn. I was going to School of Visual Arts at night to put together my portfolio because I thought I wanted to be an art director or copywriter. And I realized very quickly that that wasn't really my talent. But I was just kind of like, I don't know. I was living in Manhattan. I was paying my own rent. I was living in a third floor walk up. I was making, I think, $17,000 at the time. I was, doing whatever I guess 22, 23-year-old does in New York City, going out and having Jell-O shots on the weekend and just, creating friends and having fun. But I never had I always felt alone. Like if it's, like I said, if it's going to be, it's up to me. So when I was working and I realized that advertising really wasn't for me, I switched over to the publishing/sales area. And somebody walked in my cubicle. I was an assistant at the time, and I was a horrible assistant, by the way. Horrible. And he looks at me, and this is way before Top Gun. And he goes, "You're a maverick." I'm like, what's that? Like,
Yeah, totally. You didn't even have Google. So like, let me.
no Google back then. There was no Google back then. And there were no like cell phones back then. This was 35 years ago. And he said, "You belong in sales." And so fast forward, I wind up getting a sales job at a women's health club. And the culture in there was very catty and very not team oriented. You know, they were like taking sales. It was just not good. But they sent me to a sales seminar and I met somebody. Somebody came up to me from this financial group. I gave them my business card. They gave my business card to a sales manager, and that sales manager called me. "Would you like to get into the financial services business?" I'm like, hell no.
You're like, I'm thinking I was going to be like an artist. You're like, this is totally different.
This is like, no. Yeah, no. So he called me several times, like 5 or 6, 7 times. I'm not kidding. It was ridiculous. I finally went in just to get him off my back. And I am now realizing that what I saw in those interviews were people that were really happy and they were really in control of their own destiny and they were healthy. And there was this like energy. And I don't know what it was. It was a gut feeling. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on here, but that's what I want. And it's dawning on me as I'm telling this story that it's about the culture of where you work, and the people that you're surrounded by are pivotal in your career and your development. And if you don't seek out these people that see you better than you actually see yourself, that was the driving force for me going to that firm. It was the culture. Whatever I had to do to be successful, I could do that because I'm not afraid of hard work because I've been working since I was 14. So hard work wasn't my thing. It was finding the right people to be surrounded by, finding the right support so that when I came home and I cried every night in the shower for the first year because it was so goddamn hard, I was grinding like crazy, grinding. But to have that support, and I found my husband, I found my best friends in life who I call my brothers to this day. And I continue to have that support and love and devotion and trust. And being a woman in a man's industry, to be able to say out loud that my peeps are fully supportive. They never put baby in the corner. They made room for me at the table. So I think it's uber important to not only seek out the skills and the trajectory of your career, but it's also imperative to make sure that the leadership that's there and the people that you're working with are your people. It's important. So I would say that combined with hard work, meeting opportunity, that would be a big ingredient to the success that I've had. Hard work, meeting the opportunity, having the right people around you to support you, to believe in you, to see things in you that you can't see for yourself just yet. All of those things are just so pivotal to my success.
I love that. And so with this first job, obviously you were making more than $17,000 a year, hopefully, with the first.
In my first year going into this business, I was on Lifetime Television. I won Freshman 5, which is an industry, this company's way of saying you're the top 5 advisor in the company in their first year in the business. And that's countrywide. I was the only woman up there. Yep. And come full circle, this company also has like their top 12 advisors in the entire company. And I was one of those top 12, the only woman on that stage. And might I say, I'm very proud of this fact for this company with MassMutual, this particular company that I write a lot of business with, MassMutual. I am the only woman in their history since 1851 who has won both Freshman 5 and Chairman's Club.
Snap. You go. Wow. Abby, wow. I mean, yeah, you should be. I'm proud of that. I mean, all women should be proud of that. Like that is, that is a big deal. We all stand behind you. You are a rock star. So what was it like? Your career has two very strong anchor points, and to sort of navigate and cultivate your skills to develop family, to sort of like start to anchor yourself around things that sounds like coming up in this world, things were fragmented, disjointed, lonely, right? And then to now find yourself what sounding like to be able to create and also experience like friendship, love, stability, the ability to now say like, I don't have to depend on this unstable family structure and have to worry how to navigate that emotionally. But now you get to set the tenor and the tone of your life, and you got to really grow up within these two anchor points. What were some of the inflection moments for you where you were like, holy shit, like I'm arriving, and I'm sure there were many, but what was like the first moment where you were like, I am arriving, I'm feeling secure in my life. I'm starting to feel secure in who I am. And maybe, just maybe, you can breathe a little bit and it's less emotionally chaotic and maybe a little bit more peaceful.
That started about 5 years ago, I would say. Even more so now that I've reached that pinnacle point in my career, I'm like, okay, I did it. Okay, that's cool. Having said all that, when you reach that level of success, there's a little bit of what crept in was self-doubt and imposter syndrome. So in the beginning of the year, when that was announced, I was like, whoa, like, I don't know. It was very strange. But what I'm realizing now is that those uncomfortable feelings that I was feeling, like, do I belong here? Like, I'm really playing with the big boys now. Like, I'm like up there and people are listening to me and my words matter. And it's just like, what? Like, I'm just me. I just want to be little old me. Right. Like, but I'm realizing that those uncomfortable feelings of, believe it or not, the more successful that you become, the weirder it feels, because you're just being you. You're authentic you, and you're like, really, that work? Like, what?
You're like, get out of here, really?
Like, I didn't really have to study for that. I just am. And what I'm realizing though is those uncomfortable feelings are part of the growth. It's part of getting to that next level. It's that uncomfortable atmosphere that you're entered into where it's like uncharted waters. Like, I've never been in that position before. Okay, well, this is new. And so I don't know, I flipped the feelings of this self-doubt, imposter syndrome, weird, like, do I belong, to fucking A, I belong. I worked my butt off. And you know what? I'm a pretty goddamn good advisor. And I've been giving advice for 32 years. And I have clients from, I just had brunch with one of my first clients from 32 years ago.
Wow. What was that like? What was that feeling like?
It's funny that you say that, because my husband joined me. And when we left, he said, you're a hero to that family. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, you did their financial planning. You did all their insurance policies. You made sure that family, because one of them is disabled and on a disability insurance claim. And he bought a disability insurance policy from me, and he's disabled. He has a Parkinson's, and his policy is paying out. The life insurance policies did what they were supposed to do. It's just all of the advice that I had given him over the years allows them to sit in a restaurant and have a conversation about their kids and college and what they're doing, and that, like, their life has not been put on hold. Their life has not been disrupted because of this, because I did the proper planning with them. So it feels incredibly humbling, grateful, and empowering all at the same time that I could do that for them, because I really fight for my clients. Like, I fight for what's right, because I've experienced I've been in my client's shoes. My father died. He needed disability insurance, long-term care insurance. Like we needed the life insurance, but the investment component, all of this stuff that I do, I was in the driver's seat and my client's seat, I should say, and I experienced what it feels like to be in a toxic environment with family and not have to worry about money. Wow, that's powerful because money, oh my God, the mere topic of it can just decimate families.
Quick pause. I want to share something I'm hosting this year. It's called the Freedom 2026 Tour. I'm bringing small, in-person salons to cities across the country to talk openly about money, power, and choice. If you want to be part of one, the details are in the show notes below. Back to the episode. I'm sure you've seen it. I mean, I'm sure you've been in the thick of it.
Seen it all. I've got the very difficult job of when I am of educating people on what their lives are going to look like 25, 30 years from now. I have to do that. Why do I do that? Because I see it. I've lived it. I watch the train leave the station and I could see the wreck. And they don't. They just get on the train and they leave the station. And most people don't see 20, 30 years from now. But when I do financial planning, it's let's talk about now. You're in your accumulation phase. Let's talk about the distribution phase. What's going to be your halftime report? How are you going to take money out? What's that going to look like? What's your distribution strategy? And then preservation strategy. What do you want to leave as a legacy? How do you want to be remembered? What do you want your children? What do you want for your children? Talk to me about how your legacy looks. And so we talk about all those things in the planning. And, when you recommend certain products to solve problems and then to watch those products actually do what I said that they were going to do.
You're like, I'm so good at this.
That's freaking cool.
Totally. I love that. And so Abby, as you have children, being in this world of money, we're certainly just being born on the planet. We are born with a relationship to money. And then your whole life has been about other people and stewarding their money and making sure that they're doing the right things. When you were starting your family, what were some of the conversations that you guys had at home? Obviously, your children have had a very different life than you had growing up. So I imagine just emotion. The whole thing is probably a total 180. But what was it like for you to start to think about creating stability and what was important and having these conversations with your husband about sort of future planning? Tell me, spill the tea. What was that like for you guys?
Well, there's the parenting side of that, right? Behavior wise. And then there's the monetary side of that, raising financially fit kids, which is the second part of your question. So the first part of your question is, I wanted to break the chain. And so there are a lot of people out there that have not broken the chain and they don't see the narcissistic tendencies that are out there, but they don't see the dysfunction in the relationships and it just continues to the next generation. I refused to raise my children the way I was raised. Refused. I wasn't a helicopter parent by any stretch of the imagination. I worked their entire lives, but I did it openly, transparently, and with grace. We spoke about finances all the time at the dinner table. It was never a taboo conversation. I'll give you a stupid little example. Well, lights are on. We'd show them the bill that we had to pay. This is the bill for the electricity bill. Like, this is how much it costs to heat this house. This is how much it costs to light this house. And they were like, whoa.
Totally. I'm sure they were like, oh my God, I had no idea. I'm never turning another light on again.
To my point, exactly. Now my kids walk around turning the lights off, right? So that's just a really small example of the things that we would do to get them to respect, understand, and appreciate what we were doing, that we didn't come from money, that we're working our tushes off, that we're trying to be good parents, that we're trying to do all these things. Would I say I'm a tough parent? I don't know, but I meant what I said and I said what I meant. And I don't think a lot of parents do that. They, for example, if you do this, we're leaving. If you continue to do this, we're leaving. These like empty threats. Kids are really smart. They will get away with anything as long as they can. And when someone doesn't hold their word accountable to the child, it's a signal that I can do whatever I want. So when my kid was acting up or did something and I gave them an ultimatum of the repercussions of that behavior, oh, I did it. I fell through. Not fell through, followed through. So if they were acting a certain way, I said, we're leaving. We left. No questions. And I didn't yell, nothing. We just left. I'll give you a funny story. When my older children were in high school, they had their cell phones, right? It was like the beginning of the cell phone use in high school. And they were just rats one day. And I was like, I'm so pissed off. I'm going to turn off their cellular data. So I called up Verizon, I turned it off the data. And they get home and I'm like waiting for them to say something to me. I'm like waiting to hear the complaint, like something, what? And nothing. And I'm like, did you guys notice anything different with your phones today? They're like, no. I'm like, what do you mean? I turned the service off. They go, Ma, we have Wi-Fi in high school.
Good on you, though, for trying to
It's really funny. They had this exact same reaction they did, and they died laughing.
I mean, good effort, though. That's really good effort. How did you and your husband sort of come up with, like, I don't know, your own vision, your own wealth vision together? Was it always like aligned off the bat? Like, we're both having this mentality, like these are our frameworks, or was there, how did you guys sort of decide, like, these are our major, goals or pillars, or these are our philosophies around things?
Well, when you say around things, what particular things are you referring to?
It's a great clarifier. The ways in which you were going to, let's say, invest or spend your money, indexing on vacations or experiences, or prioritizing maybe the neighborhood you live in, or, how did you guys start to organize, I guess, life decisions and come up with a joint philosophy?
That's a really good question. It's a feel. We both we're cut from the same cloth. We both had, what's the word I'm trying to find? Challenging childhoods. My husband, not so much, but he was raised by a German mother, a wonderful father, but his father passed away at 17 and he was 17. Well, my husband was 17, not a father. He passed away suddenly and it was very traumatic. And then he was thrusted right into college. So he had no money. He had 3 jobs. No money. And my husband and I met. We met at this financial firm that I am now still at. And he's now the president and CEO of this firm. But we grew up in the business together. And we were always going down the same path. We've always had the same values. And if our values were ever challenged, I don't know, we're always in sync with how we talk about our children all the time to this day. We leverage the relationships. We talk about strategy and what are you going to say? What am I going to say? I don't know. We're like this family of very in tuned best friends. And we're very authentic and open with each other. And I don't know, it's like if we wanted to if we had to make a major decision, let's say a real estate decision or whatever, the decision is, okay, do we clean out all of our savings and spend it on this particular piece of property so that we can have a place, like a happy place for our home, for our family, that's like a hub that he wants to go to? Is the money better spent experiencing that and creating that for our family, or is it better left in the bank? We made a decision that it was better to spend it on the real estate. It's still an asset. It's still an allocation, but it created this family where everybody loves going to this place. Everybody. So we're very aligned with those kinds of things, and we don't push each other. If I want to say, for example, if I want to redecorate my house, something in my house, like it's something that I'm not going to push on, but my husband wanted to wait till the dog passed away because he would pee on the carpets and ruin our, ruin things. He's like, can we just wait till the dog passes? And like, okay, well, it was a while, 17 years, but we're finally doing it. But we're always, if we're not in lockstep, we're always discussing and strategizing how we can get there. And it's a lot of give and take. But in terms of we always had the philosophy, family comes first, period, end of conversation. Family comes first. Yeah. So, and in terms of vacations, I'll give you a funny story. We usually go on a family vacation, like every couple of years. And this one time the kids were, not out of the house. In our minds, we have 18 years to be a stern parent. Outside of that, like your job's over. Then you become a consultant, because once they turn 18, it's like, once they're out of the house, it's not as easy. So in my mind, I had 18 years that I had to that was it. How am I going to make them appreciate money? How am I going to make them understand what hard work is like? How are we going to do this one time? And how are we going to give them the value of what money can buy? And how are they going to work together when they're in different relationships outside of their spouses when they're older? How are they going to plan? How are they going to negotiate? How are they going to compromise? How are they going to communicate? All of these things we addressed when they were under our roof. The way that we did it was we gave them a budget for the vacation. We said, here, this is our budget. You guys work together to figure out where we're going, how we're getting there, where we're staying, and what we're doing and where we're eating. They came back with a presentation and everything. And we're like, okay, we approve. Let's do this. And we literally showed up. We just showed up. And they learned how to communicate with each other. They learned how to argue effectively with each other, or I should say disagree constructively with each other. They learned what things cost, the value of them. They learned customer service. They learned, what things, what you're getting for what you're paying for. All of these things. They just learned it all in this exercise. And I kid you not, they make their own travel plans. They have their own credit cards to deal with the points. Oh, my daughter's got a whole thing going. She's like, she'll go and she'll do my errands and put everything on her card and then Venmo me what I owe her, so she gets the points. It's hysterical. Like, all right, you're fine. You're okay. That's okay. But but most importantly, it taught them how to work together, because you have to work together with your spouse for your life. You have to work together. And some people don't have those skills. So I think it's important to teach those skills. We taught them when they were under our roof. You also got to teach them sidebar, you have to teach them how to party the right way so that when they go off to college, they don't get in trouble.
I mean, that's true.
You got to get in the frying drop before you go to college. You got to get it out, because if you go to college, something bad, very bad.
My younger sister, she's 12 years younger than me. And when she went off to college, I remember telling her, her first week there, I was like, do you see that girl at that party? She's like, what girl? I'm like, that girl at that party. She's like, yeah. I'm like, don't be that girl.
Exactly. Don't be that girl.
You know who I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And you could see it coming when the parents don't allow them, like they're helicopter parents. They don't allow them to do anything. I mean, oh my God. I'm like, I remember one of my daughter's friends, they weren't allowed to sleep over anybody's house. And I'm like, oh my God.
Oh my God, that is so wild. So, what's so interesting is, and I think there are so many beautiful threads and through lines and like way to weave this tapestry. When it comes to your experiences, both on the receiving end of the financial world, right? Making decisions on your own, policies and insurance and then also sort of being on the other side of advising and guiding. Spill the tea here, being on the receiving end of having to make these life decisions. And then also on the very same day or next day, having to support others in making those decisions. What does it feel like? I mean, I feel like there's this intellectual component where so much, right? And you can make great decisions. But then there's also this deeper emotional side, right? This side of like, oh, my family, my mortality, my legacy. What's it been like for you to sort of navigate, being so intimated and obviously you and your husband are in the same space, right? So you guys both know way more than you should. But what is it like to sort of navigate both of those things?
Well, I think that everyone in my business should own and experience everything that you recommend. You have to. Because I'll give you an example. I want to open up a donor advised fund. Okay. I have a client that's opening up a donor advised fund, and we're helping her do that. And I want to do the same thing. So I'm like, I need to do this myself because she's going to ask all these questions and I need to feel the process. I can't just think it. I have to feel it. I have to feel. I opened up a trust account last weekend, took an hour. I was like, oh my God, this is what my clients are doing. This is tedious. Like, I'm experiencing this. What a pain in the butt. So with all these experiences, there's an authenticity that you cannot deny because I've felt it. I've experienced it. And if I've experienced it, I can share with you what it feels like. And I can ask those questions, or I could explain it in a way that's not telling them, it's sharing with them. And it becomes kind of their idea as well, right? Like, it's the experiences that, I'll say it again, it's the experiences that causes that authenticity. And you cannot, that authenticity, the way it comes through, you can't fake that. Like, that's real, right? Like, so the way that you say it, you say it the way it feels, and it's not canned, it's not scripted, it's coming from the heart. And it's coming from a place of caring, like I just went through this and I know how this feels. And this is exactly how you need to do it. And this is what's going to happen. And I think most people don't set the expectations for people because it involves time, and it's time, energy, money, it's a whole thing. And a lot of people don't want to do it because of several reasons. They don't want to deal with it because they can't talk among themselves about it. They can't talk to their spouse about money or planning, so they don't do anything. Or they can't figure out like who's going to take care of their kids, so they don't do any planning or whatever. Then you have people that have done planning, but it's completely outdated, like 15 years ago outdated. And then you have people that have done the planning, but it's done crappy planning because there are people out there that don't know what they're doing. So I find this to be the norm, one of those three scenarios. And for me, it's important to make sure we're crossing the T's and dotting the I's, because you could make one silly mistake, like put the estate down as a beneficiary on your life insurance, for example, and that's subject to probate. And you're not going to get the full death benefit, most likely, because it's going to go through probate. You need to have a direction. I came across someone that I was doing a discovery call with, and she had a policy. Her husband had passed, and she only got half the death benefit. And I'm thinking, why? She's like, I had to go through probate. And I'm like, the only reason why that would happen is because someone put the estate down as the primary beneficiary. Cost this woman hundreds of thousands of dollars. When I found this out, and when I was going through my benefits, I don't know why my deferred comp had the estate listed. I was like, are you kidding me? Me? It's listed on there as estate? Oh my God. If it's listed for me and that mistake was found while I was going through my own stuff. So I just sent out this week, 50 emails to all of my top clients. You're going through your it's open enrollment time. Let me help you. Make sure double check your beneficiaries. You'd be surprised how many people list the estate. And these little tiny things that are bad for people, but it's because I was so flipping upset about it with my own. I was like, oh my God, I have to tell everybody, so I think I'm no stranger to any of this because I've done everything myself. So I'm able to share that experience with my clients and be able to have the empathy and the authenticity to get them to move in the right direction.
That's powerful. There's something that you said about sharing the lived experience and about the words that you use that come from the heart. You can't really fake the funk. It's like either it, you feel it, you can talk about it with this like resonance, or it's a sales script and no one buys it. And it's like, it just doesn't land, right? I mean, there's something really powerful about stewarding people through the lens of your experiences and ushering them based on your own lived thoughts. And it's powerful, Abby. I really wish onto the industry more humans like you. you know?
Thank you. It's funny that you say that because I'm being sought out because of this. It's
Yeah.
interesting. My podcasts are getting out there and people are hearing the authenticity in my voice. And I'm getting so many people calling me wanting to work with me because of that.
They
So I'm
want
really,
someone real,
yeah.
and like someone who's not afraid to say, this isn't posturing. This isn't, trying to be something else. This is being who you are and standing in your greatness and the gift that you are here to really help others with, which is powerful. And, you stand amongst the 0.0000001% of women who've been able to, hit these certain professional milestones and reach certain levels of success in this space. And, I'm curious, like, you've been in this industry now for decades. You've hit personal milestones, and yet we're also seeing less women take on these roles of advisors. I know there's like a shortage of female advisors who are opting in, and yet every day, we're hearing about the great wealth transfer. We're seeing women sort of rise up in their financial agency simply just through the maturation of time. It's now been 50 years since we could get a house on our own. And so we're starting to see this interesting confluence of wealth transfer and also wealth maturation, right? And sort of what it looks like. And, we need more women and men who are sort of speaking that language of high emotional intelligence and sort of understanding what it's like to lead with the heart. What's your experience, or how are you sort of seeing all of these components come together? And what is your hope for this, next decade, I guess, of women needing stewards like yourself to really catalyze things?
You bring up an excellent point, and I thank you for bringing it up because something happened a few years ago that changed the way I view only speaking to the primary breadwinner. Because I'm usually the only woman in the room, and because most of the people that I see client-wise throughout the years, I had traveled. I had, my family moved to Texas. I failed to tell you that, but they did move. They sold their house when I was 21. So I was also by myself in New York City. They sold my childhood home, but that's history. So I was traveling a lot, and I would meet with the husband usually because he was the primary breadwinner, and we would do the planning. Okay, fast forward. I had a client who passed away, and I kid you not, he had a policy that every year we have a conservation team at my firm, Lennox Advisors, who are solely there to make sure that policies stay on the books because things get unintentionally lapsed for travel. They missed it. They got sick. They were in the hospital, whatever. Things get missed and policies fall off the books, and then there's no coverage. An insurance carrier is only required to send one statement, one premium statement. That's it. They're only required one. At Lennox, we just hound, email, call, everything to get in touch with them. And 9 times out of 10, it's an unintentional thing that's happening. So this client of mine would come dangerously close to lapsing his policy every single year. We would chase him for the premium. Well, one summer I get a phone call from his wife. She's hysterical crying, and he died on a business trip. Yeah, in his 50s. Had a massive heart attack and died. And she was lost. She was confused. She didn't know who to call, who to speak to, where anything was. The only thing that he told her was, if something happens to me, you call Abbe Large. And she remembered my phone number. He made her remember it. So here I am listening to this, and I'm like, oh my God, did he pay his premium? I said, let me call you back. I just want to make sure the policy's in good order. Thank God it was. Thank you, my conservation team. I'm giving you kudos right now because the policy was in good order, and it was millions of dollars that was paid to her. But she was lost. She didn't know anything. I had to give her language for people because they were coming out of the woodworks trying to get the money. And it was this, I don't know, it gave me the ick that I didn't meet her. What? How did I not meet her throughout all of these years? And in that moment, granted, I did the right thing. I protected her. I protected their family. They didn't have to sell their home. They were able to put their kids through college. Kudos. Yes, fabulous. But what did I do wrong here? So now I refuse to not meet the spouse during the discovery call, because the men will say, oh, she's not interested. Are you sure she's not interested to make sure she can stay in the house should something happen to you? Are you sure she's not interested to make sure she can send the kids off to college with no problem economically? Are you sure she has enough money to live for the rest of her life comfortably in the house that she would like to be at? Are you sure she's not interested? Rhetorical questions, but they're like, you're right. Of course I'll include her. And I am leaning into the men now. I'm not leaning into the women. I'm leaning into the men, because now it's up to the men to include them. Stop putting baby in a corner. She does not belong in the corner. She belongs at the table and listening to what's going on, because she has feelings and she has thoughts and opinions that you sometimes have probably not heard out loud. And I'm going to get to the bottom of those feelings. So we're going to meet together. And if we don't meet together, we're not meeting at all. And that's the way I work. It's a non-negotiable. So I'm leaning into men now, because men need to change that narrative. It's because women get together all the time and talk about it. It's the same narrative with women, right? Women this, women that, women don't do this, women don't. We know that. We know that already. But the men need to know. And they need to change their narrative and their behavior. And that's what I'm doing right now.
Fabulous, Abby. I feel like I could grab a cocktail with you and chat with you for so many more hours. Unfortunately, I know that we're coming up on time. I have two quick questions to wrap up our lovely conversation today. The first is around, obviously, we've talked so much about money and all the ways to, deploy it and how to have conversations and some of the more emotional sides of it. Certainly, money can also be really fun. And so I would love to ask you, what has been your most recent, most fabulous way of spending your money recently, Abby?
Wow. That's a really good question. Huh. I know this is going to sound really weird. Probably paying my assistant her bonus.
Tell me more.
I couldn't live without her. I just appreciate the work that she does so much. I'm so bad at doing so many things, but I'm so good at doing the other things. And we flip-flop. What I'm really good at, she's really bad at. What I'm really bad at, she's really good at. And I have absolutely no problem paying someone to help me. There's no shame in asking for help. And I need a lot of help because I know what I'm good at. And I want to stay in that lane.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Is that crazy?
I love it. I think that's so sweet and also honest. And my final question is, obviously you stand in service to support and steward so many families in making the right decisions for themselves. And you are a beacon of resources for so many. And yet also we are always calling things in, wanting things, support, etc. How can our audience champion you? What can we do to support you? What are you calling in?
Well, the ask would be to, if you like hearing this and you like my jam, then, and you need some, even if you feel like you're buttoned up, 9 times out of 10, there's something that's not accurate. And I would be more than happy to work with very cool people that can appreciate honesty and authenticity and are ready to, get to work and be responsible financially. I would love to help. I love helping people because it's empowering for me to feel financially secure and to see the relief on other people's faces and their body language, to feel that sense of pride that they've done something and they feel good about it. That's my ask. Like, who are you? Who's out there? And you can call me. You can email me. The best way to get me is through my email. You want me to share that?
I'll have it in the show notes. If you want to share it live, you can.
No, that's fine. You'll have it in the show notes. But those that don't go to the show notes, it's alarge@lennoxadvisors.com. And that's Lenox, not 2 N's, Lenoxadvisors. I've had several people, try to connect with me once they hear me. But, I'm looking for cool people that have a desire to do some good planning and that can appreciate the authenticity that I bring to the table.
Wonderful, Abby. It's been an absolute gift to have you here today. Thank you for your honesty, your integrity, for stewarding so many into the world of being able to do what they do best, right? And financial planning isn't for everyone. And luckily it's for you because we need more people with grace to be supporting us. Thank you so much for sharing your story today on Getting Rich Together. Grateful to have you.
Thank you for having me. You asked amazing questions and I had a great time. Thank you, Syama.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Getting Rich Together. My hope is that you leave every episode feeling more inspired, more powerful, and more connected. Until next time, remember, you have everything it takes to create wealth on your terms.